Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Jazakumullah khairan, all of you, for coming, making time on your Monday evening to make it out to the Monday meeting. And we'll continue tonight our commentary on Kitab at-Tawheed, Al-Imam Mujaddid, rahimahullah ta'ala. And we are looking tonight at chapter number 28. And this is a continuation of the section that we started last week. And that was the section where we said that the Imam was going to dedicate a number of chapters to talk about umur munafiya lit-Tawheed, certain things that are not compatible with the Tawheed, some of which will negate a Tawheed entirely, and some of which will diminish a person's Tawheed without negating it or nullifying it entirely. So tonight we'll look at the chapter which the Imam entitled Babu ma ja'a fi at-Tiyara. Babu ma ja'a fi at-Tiyara. Babu ma ja'a fi at-Tatayyur. So it's 28. So basically, he says the ruling regarding evil omens. So let's first of all talk about the definition of at-Tiyara or at-Tatayyur. So the word at-Tiyara, which is derived from zajr at-Tayr, which basically means the shooing of birds, alarming them or frightening them, causing them to take flight, right? So basically, if a person sees some birds and he does, for example, a motion like this, that's what they call zajr at-Tayr, frightening, alarming, shooing birds and causing them to do what? To take flight. And from that you get at-Tiyara. What is at-Tiyara? The people of Jahiliyyah, they used to attribute certain messages or certain meanings, positive or negative indications, to the path that birds took when they flew away. So if a person did this zajr at-Tayr, right? Or if a person came out of his house and he frightened some birds. He didn't realize the birds were there, but he came off his house and the birds were there, perched nearby. And because he came out, it frightened them and it caused them to what? To take flight. Well, the Arabs of Jahiliyyah, they would derive meanings from what? From the flight path. So if it flew to the right, if it flew to the left, if they flew in the opposite direction of him, or if they flew towards him, they would attribute different meanings to those flight patterns. So in other words, they believed in omens generally. And particularly, they believed in omens associated with the flight patterns of birds. That's why evil omens, the word for it in Islamic terminology is at-Tatayyur, which comes from at-Tayr, which what? Is birds. You guys see that? So basically, the reason why that word has been co-opted for the meaning of evil omens is because they believed in omens generally, but specifically, particularly, they believed in omens associated with the flight patterns of birds. So what is an omen? An omen is basically some event which is regarded as a portent or a predictor of good or evil. A sign that something good is about to happen. So something will happen and a person will say, oh man, something bad is about to happen. Yeah, something, so exactly. So something will happen and a person might say, because this happened, I can expect something good to happen, right? And they would call that a good omen. And conversely, something would happen and a person would say, I don't even need to go out to my shop today. They might open their door and see something. And because they saw that thing, they would close up their door, lock it very tight, and go and lay down under the covers, believing that it's an indication that something bad is going to happen if they go out. So the name for this concept of evil omens in Islamic terminology is this word at-Tiyara, right? At-Tiyara. And that's because it was the most common form of evil omen or evil portent or ominous portent for the Arabs of Jahiliyyah. And the act of believing in these omens is what the Imam used in the tarjuma, at-Tatayyur. So the act of believing in it is at-Tatayyur. So you have at-Tiyara, which is the concept of what? Evil omens. At-Tatayyur is the act of what? Believing in those omens. And the one who believes in them is called mutatayyir. Mutatayyir. All of it revolving around the root word at-Tayr, which is what? Birds, right? Or a bird. Tayyib. Now, although the word in Islamic terminology used for evil omens is this word at-Tira, which we keep repeating, at-Tira, right? Prohibited omens are not confined to the flight paths or the flight patterns of birds. We have to understand that. Now, we can't think that the only omens that Islam prohibits are the ones associated with the flight patterns of birds. No, Islam just uses that terminology because it was the one commonly known or practiced by the Arabs, but it wasn't the only one they practiced, and it's not the only one Islam prohibits, and we're going to see why. Islam doesn't, as the ulama say, al-Islam la yufarriq بين متماثلات ولا يجمع بين متفرقات. In Islam never differentiates between two things which are what? Which are similar in their what? In their basic makeup, foundation, etc. If they're similar in their makeup and foundation and their reality, they'll have the same ruling. And if they're different in their makeup, foundation, and reality, they have a different ruling. So everything that would fall in the category of being an omen would have the same ruling as what? At-Tira. You guys see that? So other examples of omens, and many of us know these. For example, let's say, for example, a person all of a sudden, his ear starts to itch. He would take that as a sign that someone is saying bad things about him, right? That's an omen that somebody somewhere is saying bad things about me, right? That's an example of an omen. Another example is if a person were sitting at the dinner table, right? Got a salt shaker, got a pepper shaker, and he reaches for some hot sauce or something like that and knocks over the salt shaker and salt spills. Oh no. That's an omen that something bad is going to happen, right? The spilling of salt. Another example is like, for example, person might be walking along the path and he sees along his path, sees a black cat. Or if he's walking, for example, on a trail in a park, he sees what? A snake. And they would consider that an indication that some unpleasant circumstance is headed their way. These are all examples of evil omens, and all of them have the same ruling as what? Zajr al-Tayr, a person seeing the flight pattern of birds. Tayyib. Now there's some related terms that are going to benefit us a little later on. One of them is at-Tasha'um, which means pessimism. At-Tasha'um means pessimism. The opposite of that in Arabic is at-Tafa'ul, which is optimism. And the sister for this tafa'ul is al-fa'l. And we're gonna see this word, it's gonna come, the terminology is gonna come in a couple of the hadith of Rasulullah, and we're gonna talk about these terms and what they mean in this whole concept of at-Tira, which is evil omens, right? So at-Tasha'um, pessimism. And it has a sister, which is a shu'um, which comes in a hadith that we're going to mention hopefully at the end if we have time. And then at-Tafa'ul, which is optimism, which has a sister, which is al-Fa'l, which we're going to see in one of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the chapter. Tayyib. So this mutatayyir, which is the one who believes in these evil omens, is the one who he feels pessimistic when he's confronted with a presumed evil omen. And we give some examples. Could be the flight pattern of birds. He sees this evil omen and it makes him what? Pessimistic. Or he could see the black cat. He could see the snake. He could feel his ear itching. Whatever it is, whatever the evil omen, when that makes him feel pessimistic. Or his pessimism is founded only in superstition. Okay, his pessimism is founded only in superstition. He doesn't have anything tangible that would make him think that something good or something bad is on the horizon. It's purely founded in what? In superstition. This, if it leads him to abandon his plan or his pursuit, this is what is meant by what? At-Tira, right? Or at-Tatayyur. It's like, I'm going to do this. Right? For example, I'm going to go out of my house. I'm going to go to my shop, right? I have like a garment shop. I'm going to open my shop and sell my garments like I do every day. Person goes, opens the door and sees a black cat. Meow. Closes the door. locks the house as tight as a drum and goes and lays in the covers because he saw a black cat. That is what? At-Tawheed, right? That is what we're talking about. The pessimism that not only is it pessimism that makes a person feel, makes him doubt whether or not there's going to be a good or bad outcome, but it's doubt or pessimism that leads him actually to what? To change course. That is what we mean by, or what the Imam means and what the scholars of Islam mean by at-Tawheed or at-Tatayyur. So this is what the Imam meant by the chapter. He says, what is said regarding belief in omens, meaning that which singly, underscore the word singly, motivates a person to continue or to abandon his plan or pursuit and is not substantiated. It is an unsubstantiated cause for this effect. Unsubstantiated cause for this effect. And underscore that too. It's important for two reasons, because we're going to talk about al-fa'l later on. So it caused him to abandon. That's the first thing. Caused him to abandon his plan or his pursuit. And it's not a substantiated cause for this effect. It's not a justified reason for him to what? To change course. So now this concept of at-Tatayyur and its ruling is related to a principle that we learned quite a few chapters back. You guys remember we spent a few chapters talking about this principle of causality? Remember that? And we talked about the talismans and how a person makes this talisman, which is an unsubstantiated cause, for what? For an effect. If I wear this talisman, it will protect me from the jinn. So he has no way to make a link. He has no proof to draw a link between the talisman and protection from the jinn, but he draws the link anyway. And we said that doing that is a form of what? Shirk. And it's a form of shirk. It could be major or minor. It's major shirk if he believes it does it independent of Allah. This talisman will protect me independent of Allah's will, right? It has the power. It has its own power independent of Allah's will to protect me from whatever. That is what? Major shirk. If the person believes it protects me by the will of Allah, that would make it what? Minor shirk. But either way, it would be what? Shirk. Mumtaz. So this tiyara is what? Falls under that category. The person believes that omen is what? Is a cause for this effect, and that belief is unsubstantiated. There's no way that he can provide proof to substantiate the link between seeing the black cat and that bad things are going to happen. Guys, see that? طيب, mumtaz. طيب. Now, if you notice, the Imam, he didn't provide a definitive ruling. We said that the general rule is that if you consider something a cause for a specific tangible effect, and you have no proof to draw that conclusion, it will either be major shirk if you believe it's independent of Allah, or minor shirk if you believe that it's by Allah's will. But the Imam didn't say babu min ash-shirk at-tiyara or tatayyur. He didn't say that at-tiyara is a form of idolatry. He didn't say that. Why not? What he said is what is said regarding at-tiyara. He left it open-ended because at-tiyara is not always classified as idolatry, but rather the ruling will depend upon how the individual responds to what? To the omen. You guys see that? So suppose the person saw the omen, comes out of his house, sees the black cat, meow, right? And he says, man, black cats, people say it's bad luck. And he steps out of his house, closes the door, locks it up, and keeps going to his shop. Is that person guilty of idolatry? No. The thought occurred to him, and he did what? He dismissed it. That person is not guilty of idolatry. He's done what's expected of him as a Muslim, put his trust in Allah, and kept it moving. طيب. The second person is the one who recognizes the evil omen, sees the black cat, and his decision and pursuit of his objective is influenced by it. The presence of the cat influences what? His decision to go ahead and advance. He retreats. But he retreats because he believes black cats are a cause for bad luck by what? by Allah's will, he would be what? Guilty of? Minor shirk. Minor shirk. Minor shirk. I believe black cats are a cause for bad luck by Allah's will. Can't substantiate that. When you make a cause and effect relationship between two things, you can't substantiate it, that automatically is what? Minor shirk. It will be major shirk, which is the third case. Same situation. Recognizes the evil omen and his decision to pursue his objective is influenced by it. Turns back around, locks up his house as tight as a drum, gets under the covers and covers his head, right? With the covers. And doesn't get out of bed the whole day. And he does that believing that the black cat is a source of bad luck independent of Allah's will. That would be major shirk. You guys see that? So 3 different levels. We'll go through it again. You tell me what the ruling is.
But what was the first guy guilty of?
He wasn't guilty of anything.
Okay.
Remember we said
okay. He just, that's bad.
He dismissed it. That's something that they say. So the thought occurred to him, but he just what? He dismissed it. So we'll go down. I'll give you the examples and you tell me what's what. Steps out of his house and a bunch of crows fly to the left. Fly to his left. He said, oh man, that's a sign of bad luck. No matter what I do, no matter what Allah says, no matter what Allah wills, today is not going to be a good day. And he goes back in his house. What's the ruling? Major shirk, mumtaz. Guy comes out, black crows, they get frightened, they fly to the left, and he's like, alhamdulillah, because them crows would have just crapped all over my car, and keeps on going. What's the ruling on him? He's good to go. That's what a Muslim is supposed to do. Put his trust in Allah and keep it moving. Last one came on his house, birds flew to the left. He went back in the house, didn't go about his business because he's afraid, but he believed that these crows indicate there's going to be bad luck by Allah's will. Minor shirk, mumtaz. All right. So now this theorah, when it falls into the categories that we just talked about, the last two, which is either major shirk or minor shirk, is prohibited for 3 reasons. The reason why the Sharia came with the prohibition of this theorah that the Arabs used to practice is because, one, it's that cause and effect that's unsubstantiated. Remember, we talked about that. Every cause or every establishing of a relationship of causality that's not substantiated is what? Is haram and also shirk. Could be major, could be minor. That's the first reason. The second reason is that it basically necessitates a negative perception and a poor expectation of Allah. When a person basically believes that the day is going to go bad simply because he saw X, Y, or Z, it shows that what? He doesn't have a good perception, a good expectation of Allah. You guys see that? And that's another reason why it's prohibited, because he had a good expectation of Allah. Allah will protect me, right? Allah will protect me. If he had good expectation of Allah, forget about what these birds do. Forget about what this cat does. Allah will protect me. If he had good expectations, that would be his attitude. But the fact that he saw this and believed that it would affect the outcome of his entire day is a sign that what he has poor expectations and a poor perception of Allah. It's another reason why it's prohibited. And last but not least, it indicates a lack or the absence of a tawakkul. The lack or absence of putting your trust in Allah and relying upon what? Upon Allah. And the Muslim is supposed to be what? وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلْ الْمُتَوَكِّلُونَ. Right? وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَتَوَكَّلُوا إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. And put your trust in Allah if you are truly believers. You guys see that? So a believer is supposed to put his trust in Allah, not his trust in what? In black cats and black crows, etc. So now let's look at the actual nusus, the actual text that the Imam brought in the chapter. And the first of them are 2 ayat, one from Surah Al-A'raf, the 7th chapter, verse 131. And the second one from Surah 36, which is Surah Yasin, number 19, verse number 19. So the first one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَا إِنَّمَا طَائِرُهُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرَهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Verily their evil omens are with Allah, but most of them know not. What do you guys think? Is Allah speaking positively or negatively about these evil omens? أَلَا إِنَّمَا طَائِرُهُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرَهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Positive or negative? Is he praising them or criticizing them? Negative. He's criticizing them. Mumtaz. Let's look at the next one. He says, قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. They, the messengers, said, your evil omens will be with you. Do you call it evil omen because you are admonished? Nay, but you are a people who are musrifun, transgressing all bounds. إلى آخره. So what do you think? Praising or criticizing? Criticizing. So in both cases, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the practice of these pagans and that they had this practice of believing in evil omens. And in each case, Allah criticizes them for their belief in these evil omens and their ominous portents, believing that because this happened, bad things are going to happen. The outcome has already been determined. It's going to be bad, right? And whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions anything in the Quran in the context of criticism, that's an indication it's what? It's haram. That's an indication it's what? It's prohibited. So the asl, the original rule when it comes to a tiyara is that it's what? It's prohibited. Mumtaz. طيب, ثم بعد ذلك we come to the hadith of Abu Hurairah, in which the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لا عدوى ولا طيرة ولا هامة ولا سفر. And in the version of Muslim, he said, or he added, ولا نوء ولا غول. So basically the meaning, as translated by the translator, he says there's no adwa. And al-adwa means contagion or contagious disease independent of Allah's will. Doesn't mean there's no such thing as contagion or contagious diseases. There are. COVID is a contagious disease, right? Some forms of the flu are contagious. There are other diseases which are contagious, right? So the Prophet isn't negating the concept of contagion. What he's negating is the contagion that the Arabs believed in, a contagion that could infect multiple individuals or animals, etc., independent of Allah's will. That's what they believed. That the contagion had what? Its own will, independent of Allah's will. The Prophet is negating that. That's adwa. He says, and there should be no tiyara. There should be no belief in evil omens, right? There should be no belief in evil omens. He said there should be no hamma. Hamma, some of the scholars say that the early Arabs, they believed that the dead spirits or the dead souls or the souls of dead people would do what? Would fly around at night. And some people say that this is what? Hamma. But the most popular interpretation of hamma is what? Is the owl. That people would consider the owl as an evil omen. You guys see that person comes out and there's an owl in the tree outside of his home. They would consider that as what? As an evil omen, right? So there's no evil omen in what? In owls, is what the Prophet is saying, right? Nor is should a person consider Safar, the month of Safar, as a bad omen. Safar is the month that comes after Muharram. Don't consider that as a bad omen. In Muslim it adds wala no. No, the Arabs of the Prophet's time had this concept that certain phases of the moon would indicate that there was going to be rain, right? So certain phases of the moon indicate that there's going to be rain. So they made the appearance of the moon as a cause for what? The effect of getting rain. So the Prophet is saying what? We don't believe in that. We don't believe in that. It's not acceptable for a Muslim to believe in that. And last but not least, wala ghul. Al-ghul is something similar to, basically the Arabs, al-ghul, amongst the early Arabs, was a particular, for lack of a better word, race of jinn or race of shayateen. And what it's similar to in our vernacular, in our terminology, is the boogeyman. It's something that people will say, hey, do this or what? Or the boogeyman is going to come to get you. You know how people do it in our culture. That's what they say. So, for example, a parent will say to their child, clean up your room or the boogeyman is going to get you. Right? Do this or the boogeyman is going to get you. So in their culture, they didn't say boogeyman. They said what? Ghul. You guys see that? Ghul. Tayyib. So the Prophet's saying there should be what? There should be none of this. There should be none of this. So in this hadith, the Prophet specifically said there is to be no tiyara. there's to be no belief in evil omens. This is a clear indication that believing in evil omens in Islam is prohibited. It's a no-no. طيب ثم بعد ذلك in the hadith of Anas, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لا عدوى ولا طيرة ويعجبني الفأل قالوا وما الفأل قال الكلمة الطيبة. So, in this hadith, the Prophet said there is no belief in contagion. Does that mean we don't believe in COVID? Huh? So what does he mean there's no contagion?
It's the world
You
is
said-
independent of Allah's
You're saying it's independent of Allah's will. So we believe that there are contagious diseases, but by Allah's will, not independent of Allah's will. Then he says, no tira. No tira what? No belief in evil omens. There should be none of that amongst the Muslims. Muslims shouldn't believe in that. Muslims should dismiss that. But then he says, وَيُعْجِبُنِ الْفَأَلْ. وَيُعْجِبُنِ الْفَأَلْ, he says, I find al-fa'al appealing. Al-fa'al, we talked about that earlier. Somebody remind me what al-fa'al means. You know, I forget, I'm getting old. Huh? No, you can't cheat and use what they said. What did we say? No, al-fa'al, we said it earlier. We said they're two,
sister of tafahul.
of a tafa'ul. Good. So what was a tafa'ul? Optimism. See, y'all tag teamed on that. Good job. All right. So a tafa'ul is optimism. And the sister of it is al-fa'al, right? So basically something that makes you feel optimistic. You guys see that's what the Prophet said, but something that makes you feel optimistic, yu'jibuni, is appealing to me, right? Is appealing to me. A bad, rough translation would be good omens, but that would be a bad, rough translation, okay? But some people might translate it like that, but the best way probably to translate it is what? Something that inspires what? Optimism. He says is appealing to me. So he says we don't believe in evil omens. We don't believe these bad things. You see certain things and it means what? Something bad is going to happen. But something that inspires optimism is appealing to me. I like that. You guys see that?
No. So give an example.
I promise I will. I'm coming. So this word, the wording of the hadith, it indicates that a tira is what? Is bad, is haram, is not allowed, is impermissible. But al-fa'al is what? Is not. Al-fa'al is not. So the word, let me explain now. As Habib said. The word al-fa'al, it comes from the same root as the tafa'ul. You can hear it in it. Tafa'ul, fa'al, you can hear. They come from what? The same root. They're from the same family. And they all revolve around optimism, right? Tafa'ul, right? They all revolve around optimism. And what the Prophet intends by al-fa'al is the enthusiasm, the increased resolve, and the confidence one feels when he or she has already resolved to adopt a plan of action, to take a course, or pursue a certain matter. The person's already made up their mind. This is what I'm going to do, right? And then they hear something, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Then they hear something or see something pleasant or some indication that things will go as planned or their objective is likely to be achieved. Okay, so stay with me. The first pillar is they've already what? Made up their mind. Made up their mind to do X, to do Y, to do Z. Then they hear or see something pleasant that makes them think the thing that I was going to do, I definitely should do it. It increases what? Their resolve. I'm definitely going to do this. Increases what? Their enthusiasm, their confidence that this is what? It's going to turn out right. And I'll give you some examples. For example, let's say a person was planning to travel, right? He was planning to travel to a certain place. And he looks at the forecast, and the forecast says that the weather at this destination he's going to is expected to be exceptionally good, right? So that makes him what? More enthusiastic to go, right? Oh man, the weather's gonna be perfect. They say it's gonna be a nice little cool breeze. I can wear my nice sweatshirt that I just got. Man, I'm definitely going, right? It makes him more what? Enthusiastic. Another example, let's say he was planning to get married to a woman. And he meets a person who married a girl from the same town, from the same tribe, from the same family. And he raves about how happy she has made him. And that makes him say, I was already going to marry her. But after you said that, I'm even more what? I'm even more resolved to go through with it. You see with that? Or a person who is thinking about asking his supervisor for a raise. Think about asking his supervisor for a raise. And he's talking to one of his coworkers. He said, yeah, man, I just really feel like I've earned this promotion. I've earned this raise. And I really just want to walk into so-and-so's office and tell him, hey, I deserve this. You should give this to me. And the coworker says, I was talking with the supervisor just the other day, and he was just going on and on about you and how highly he thinks of you and how he would hate to lose you to another employer. You guys see that? What does that do to the person? Oh, I'm definitely going in there now. It just increases in what? In resolve. That's what? That's what the Prophet, or these are examples of what the Prophet meant by what? Al-Fa'l. Well, yu'jibun al-Fa'l. Okay? So in each case, the person who was already planning to pursue a certain course becomes more encouraged and intent on pursuing it. These are examples of al-Fa'l. Now the question comes, what is the difference? Is that what you're about to ask?
No.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. But just to me, it seems like all of the three examples you gave, like the forecast, like these are things that. Okay, so let's go back to the thing where somebody walks out their house and the birds fly, because all of those were like negative examples.
Okay.
So if I'm going out my house, I'm like, okay, I want to have a good day at work, whatever, and I open the door, but I hear birds chirping, singing, this, that, whatever. So I said, oh man, it's gonna really be a good day today. But there's no connection between birds chirping and having a good day.
Mumtaz.
But there's a connection between somebody saying, yeah, this girl's family is this, or the forecast. So
you're saying,
give me something where there's not a connection.
Okay, let's take the one you. I'm going to work. I'm going to work regardless. I'm going to make this money. I go out, chirp, 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 chirp. You know, it's real. The Joe is pleasant. The air is pleasant. The birds are chirping, and I just get what? More enthusiastic. That wouldn't be a theater, because why? And as we're going to see, I've already made up my mind, and this isn't changing my mind. It's not affecting my decision. It's just increasing me in what? Enthusiasm or resolve. You see that? It's making my mood more positive. Like you said, today's going to be a good day. It just makes me more what? More optimistic.
What about the white cat?
Huh?
On the door you see white cat instead of black.
You see a white cat, I'm going anyway. But alhamdulillah, it's a white cat. Now get off my lawn.
But if I feel like today's going to be a better day because I saw that, or because I heard the bird.
Better day, no. Better day, no.
Because
if you make, if you, no, if you,
it must be a good day.
Enthusiastic is one thing. Believing that somehow, some way, this cat or these birds affect the outcome is something different. You see that?
How about the difference between, I like, you mentioned the moon. You know, and sometimes you'll see like with the sunset, the moon, the birds flying in a direction. It is indicative that there might be bad weather coming in, or some sort of event happening. So where's the difference?
Okay, what's the difference? Mumtaz, what's the difference? What's the difference? Somebody tell me what the difference is.
I mean, because you know Allah will say, and I get that part of it.
We're like with birds flying south in the winter. I mean, there's something.
Mumtaz.
Yeah, it has connected.
Say it again.
It's connected.
Say it again. You connect. There's a connection. There is an actual what? Researched, evidence-based connection. What are we against in Islam? We're against a cause and effect relationship being established, which is what? Unsubstantiated. That's what we kept unsubstantiated.
First examples is everything was negative when he walked out the house. So what I'm saying is if he gets these signs.
Yeah.
But now it's a positive mindset.
Positive mindset that doesn't do what?
Change.
That doesn't change, because remember what we said earlier on. A theater, what does it do? A theater, it affects what? It causes you to what? To change your course. It causes you to change your course.
So
I was going to do this.
For something more positive.
I was going to do this. Now I'm not going to do it because what? Because this happened. Now I'm establishing a cause and effect between what? Between what I saw and this. I've already made up my mind I'm going to marry the girl. But now when this person told me this, it just made me what? More resolved. It increased me in what? In optimism. That's different from a theater. And we, go ahead.
You can change your course if it's substantiated.
Absolutely. Yeah, you get the weather report and they're like, yeah, Hurricane Ian is about to land in Myrtle Beach where you were headed. Yeah, don't go to, yeah, because it's substantiated.
So like people like would be like you going outside and then you find $20 on the ground and you're like initially you're like today's gonna be a good day, I'm going to work, and now you see this $20, you're like, oh, I know it's gonna be a good day. I found $20 like.
Not I know it's going to be a good day,
Or now I feel like
but it fills me what?
it makes me feel better.
With optimism. It fills me with enthusiasm. I got this $20. I was already going. Now I'm even more hyped to go. I'm more excited to go. No, itching. Now, that's a good one. What if a person said, my hand is itching, I'm getting ready to get some money? What do you guys think? What do you guys think about that?
I think that's an omen. It's superstition.
That's an omen that will be prohibited, even though it's a good thing. You're expecting a good thing. Why? Because the connection is what? What's the connection? Unsubstantiated. You guys see that? There's unsubstantiated connection between your hand itching and getting some what? Some money. Does that make sense? We still got time, right? Okay. So let's revisit that now, the difference. What is the difference? Why is this approved? Al-Fa'l. And Al-Tira is, why is Al-Fa'l approved and Al-Tira is disapproved? So number one, Al-Tira involves or necessitates considering the omen to be what? To be a cause. To be a cause which produces a specific tangible effect, right? And that's what makes it shirk. You guys see that? And this is seen clearly by the fact that it does what? It dictates and determines the person's what? The person's movement. You guys see that? So that's the first reason why it's different. Al-Fa'al, on the other hand, does not dictate or determine the decision. It's not considered a cause what? That produces what? An effect. I've already made up my mind. All it does is what? It's increase my confidence, my resolve, my optimism, my enthusiasm. But I was already going to do it what? Anyway. That's all, okay? So the person already made up his mind. He was going to do it anyway. And all that incident that happened or whatever he saw, all it did was it just pushed him, put a little more wind in his sails. You see that? Last but not least, remember we said that the Tira, it indicates a negative perception or a poor expectation of Allah. You're thinking poorly of Allah. Allah is going to let bad things happen to me. Allah is going to let this happen. Allah is going to make my day miserable. That shows what? Su'avan billah. Negative perception of Allah. But when you have al-fa'al, things are going to work out. Things are going to be good. Is that negative towards Allah? No, it's what? It's positive. I believe that things are going to be good. I think things are going to work out, etc. Let's look now at the hadith of Uqbat ibn Amr. I think that's the one. Yeah, that's the one. So that's the one where he said, ذُكِرَتْ الطِّيرَةُ عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال أحسنها الفأل ولا ترد مسلما فإذا رأى أحدكم ما يكره فليقول اللهم لا يأتي بالحسنات إلا أنت ولا يدفع السيئات إلا أنت ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بك. So in this hadith, as the translator says, he said the Prophet said, "At-Tira, believing in bad omens, was once mentioned before Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, the best form of it is al-fa'al, right? What's permitted, what's allowed from this whole, amalgamation of omens is al-fa'al, which is optimism or expecting something what? Something good by Allah's what? By Allah's permission. It does not prevent, now underscore that, it does not prevent a Muslim from his object. The Prophet is telling us, what is it about at-Tira that makes it what? What makes it haram? It's because it what? It affects what? Your decision making. You've drawn a straight line between the cause and a specific outcome. You see that? Then he says, whenever any one of you sees something he dislikes, he should pray. Now this dua, according to the scholars of hadith, is not authentic. But there's another dua that replaces it, which is authentic, which was mentioned by Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. And it's authentic from his statement. But the scholars of Islam say that he had to have heard it. The way that it's worded, he had to have heard it from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So this one takes the place of the one we have in the book, and it's where he said, Allahumma la khayra illa khayruk, wa la tayra illa tayruk, wa la rabba ghayruk, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa bik. He said, oh Allah, there's no good except your good, except good that comes from you. No omen except your omen. No Lord except you, and no power or might except by your will. Right? So that's the dua that he said. Why don't we say that together so we can memorize it? Allahumma la khayra illa khayruk, wa la tayra illa tayruk, wa la rabba ghayruk, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa bik. Mumtaz. طيب, last but not least, we have the hadith of Mas'ud, in which the Prophet explicitly referred to at-tira as a form of idolatry. He said, at-tira to shirk, at-tira to shirk. He said it twice. This belief in evil omens is shirk. Believing in evil omens is shirk. And then he said, وَمَا مِنَّا إِلَّا. There is none amongst, and what that means is there is none of us except that it might occur to his heart whatever the evil omen pretends, right? We're growing up and we learn about the concept of evil omens. Black cat means this, a snake means that, crows flying this way means this means that, and so on and so forth. Your ear starts itching, somebody saying bad things about you. We hear these things. They're in our society, they're in our environment, they're swimming around us. So when we're in those situations, the thought might what? Might occur to us. When that thought occurs to us, he says, وَمَا مِنَّا إِلَّا. There's not one of us except what? Except it's possible that thought might occur to us. Right? But as long as we do what? We push it out of our heart, push it out of our minds, and reject it on its face. We just dismiss it. Right? We just dismiss it. Then we're not guilty of idolatry. That's what the Prophet means when he says, وَمَا مِنَّا إِلَّا. Right? That as long as we push it out, it's not considered idolatry. And this is supported by the hadith collected by Muslim authority Muawiyah ibn Hakam as-Sulami, in which he said, Ya Rasulullah, inna minna rijalan yatatayyarun. He said, O Messenger of Allah, there are people amongst us who believe, or who, I don't know, maybe believe not the right word, but they recognize and have the idea of evil omens. Right? It occurs to them that certain things are evil omens. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, ذَلِكَ شَيْءٌ يَقَعُ فِي نَفْسِ أَحَدِكُمْ. He says that is something which occurs in the heart or in the spirit of one of you. فَلَا يَسُدَّنَّكَ. He said, don't let it stop you. What's going to put you in trouble as a Muslim is not that the thought occurs to you. What will put you in trouble as a Muslim is that what? Is that you let it stop you. Is that you let it stop you. طيب, I don't know. Should we stop here and just take question discussion, or do one other thing? What do you think? What do you guys think? Rafiq says keep going. You got something else to say? Say what you got to say. Huh? So let me do one thing real quick, and then we'll have time for discussion, because even if we do the adhan, we'll still have time between the adhan and the iqamah. So I want to mention one thing, and I hope it doesn't create controversy or cause confusion, but there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, collected by Bukhari and Muslim, on the authority of Abdullah ibn Umar. And that hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, La adwa wa la tira. So he starts it like he started the hadith of Anas. He said, there's no contagion, and there's no evil omens or believing in evil omens in Islam. Then he says, وَإِنْ كَانَ الشُّؤُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ. But if, and you guys remember that word, shu'um, at-sha'um, remember in the beginning? Which is the opposite, which is what? Pessimism. He said, if there is legitimate pessimism in anything, he said, فَفِي الدَّارِ. It is in one's home. وَالْمَرْأَةِ. One's wife. وَالْفَرَسِ. One's riding beast, or in our case, it would be somebody's what? Their automobile. Okay? So now some people consider this hadith to be problematic in light of everything that we've learned thus far. that the Prophet ﷺ is confirming a shu'um, like pessimism or legitimate worrisome feelings, legitimate anxiety in what? In a person's home, in a person's wife, and a person's vehicle in our case, right? So the scholars of Islam, they go and they mention different ways that this can be reconciled. And so basically what the scholars of Islam have said is that Islam does not negate legitimate cause and effect relationships between certain things. That certain things can legitimately cause what? Pessimism. And if they legitimately cause pessimism, then what? Then they're legitimate. That's what the Prophet is basically in essence saying. So to give more detail, let's say a person sitting talking to his wife and say, we should, it's a long weekend this weekend. Why don't we invite some people over to the house? Why don't we entertain? And he says, nah, I don't want to entertain. I don't want to bring people to the house because it's small and it's kind of old. And every time people come over, something breaks down. The toilet backs up, right? This thing breaks. This thing happens. One time the people came, and because we have issues with the electricity and with the fuse box, the lights went out and I couldn't get it fixed. And we're all sitting there in the dark, right? And it was embarrassing for me. It's like every time, it's like the house is old. There's some legitimate issues with it. And every time we entertain, we have issues. So because of the legitimate, it's a small house, it's an old house, and they have issues. These are legitimate what? Concerns. And to draw a straight line between cause and effect in a case like this would be what? Legitimate. To say, no, if we entertain, something's bound to happen. Because it always does, right? So if a person had shu'um, and he said, nah, I don't want to entertain because of that, and he had legitimate reason or cause to say that, then that's what the Prophet's talking about here as far as a dar. Let's say a person pulls up to the house, gets in his driveway, and just sits in his car. Sits there with his head in his, in his hands, and his neighbor comes. Man, you've been sitting out here for 2 hours and you go in the house. I said, nah, I don't want to go in the house because it's going to be a fight, man. It's always a fight. Every time I go in the house, it's a fight about something, right? It doesn't matter what I do. It's always going to be a fight. I don't want to go in there. And this is his experience with his what? With his family. It's legitimately his experience. And so he's pessimistic about going in the house because what? Because of his experience. And the same thing could be with what? His car, always breaking down. It's always something. It's just a lemon, right? As soon as I fix one thing, something else breaks. So his wife says, hey, they got something going on in Augusta, the Muslim community, they have a carnival. We should take the kids. Augusta's how far? About an hour away, right? On the highway. No, I don't want to be broke down on the highway, trying to flag down help. I don't want to do that. Every time we take this car any distance beyond the grocery store and back, it breaks down. So I'm not going to do it. So all this shu'um is based upon what? Upon his experience, real, tangible experience. Then some people say, okay, but there are other things that you can draw a straight line between your experience and what? And reasons for pessimism or justifications for pessimism. So why did the Prophet specifically mention what? These three things. And the scholars, they said, because these are three things where there's commonly what? There's commonly trouble for people. So it wasn't that the Prophet is saying these are the only three things, but these are very what? Very common things, okay? So the al-khulasa, the summary, is that Islam doesn't negate making a cause and effect or drawing a cause and effect relationship or a link between two things if what? If there is a legitimate, justifiable link between those two things. And that's the basic meaning of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It's not negating what we've learned thus far or saying it's okay to draw an unsubstantiated cause and effect between what? Between two things. All right, and with that we'll close or we'll stop. Any questions, comments, or critiques?
Did you put anxiety or grief into the pessimism?
I said when we're talking about the shu'um specifically, I was just trying to explain and give different other terms that would kind of help us conceptualize. So I said pessimism, anxiety, troublesome feelings, worrisome feelings like that. Yeah. Habib, then Rafiq. تفضل.
I just wanted to, maybe I missed this here with the two verses. Surah Al-Araf and Surah Yasin. It says the omens are with Allah, then it says the evil omens are with Allah, then it says the evil omens are with you. So which one is it?
So, okay, so the evil omens are with Allah is ultimately Allah controls everything, right? Allah controls everything. And so you shouldn't believe in the omens. You shouldn't believe in the omens. You should believe what? In the will of Allah, which supersedes everything, right? Even these omens which you have imagined to have certain power or influence on the outcome. Ala ta'irukum ma'akum. Indeed, your omens are with you. Means what? This is something what? You made up. Something that what? Something that you have attached your hearts to, right? But you have no basis for it. It's something that you've made up, basically.
The evil omens are with Allah, basically meaning
He's in control of everything.
so whether they went this way, that way, it didn't.
Exactly. He's in control of everything. Exactly. And that's what you should believe in. That's what you should attach your heart to. That's what you should latch on to. But what have you done? Ala ta'irukum ma'akum. You've latched your hearts onto what? Onto those evil omens. Right? Yeah. And your evil omens can't hurt us. Right? Your evil omens can't hurt us because that's just something that you made up and latched onto. Yep.
Situation where you don't believe in omen, it's omen. But you walking down the street, there's a ladder. You know, they have a thing about walking under a ladder. You don't believe in this walking under bed look. But you look up and there's a man working on the ladder. So you walk around it just in case he might drop something or whatever. That wouldn't be the same thing as a minor shirk or anything like that. You're just taking precautions because he's working up there. He might drop something.
Mumtaz.
So you walk around it. Nobody up there, you walk right under and don't pay it no mind.
Like, what y'all think?
I think
It's safe.
it's safe.
Yeah, it's a
Because there's a call, because you don't want a wrench to drop on your head.
Yeah, he working up there. Things could fall.
Yeah, I think they're right, Rafiq. You know why? Because when you went around, you didn't go around. What motivated you to go around? It wasn't the belief in the evil omen of going under ladders. It was the fact that something might,
And he's doing something.
and Allah knows that,
Yeah.
right? Allah knows our intentions.
Right.
And so if your intention was, again, like you said, I don't feel safe. He's got a bucket of paint, right, in his hand, holding it loosely. That bucket might fall, or he might spill some of the paint on me. Like you said, he might have a wrench trying to fix something. It drops out of his hand. It just is not from safety to what? To go under this ladder. That's what motivated me to go around. Had nothing to do with the omen. Yeah, so yeah, that won't.
Nobody up there working.
Yeah.
Walk around the ladder.
If,
That's what I just said.
yeah, if you walk around the ladder, and the reason why you walked around because I just don't want to walk under a ladder, then again, there wouldn't be a problem with that. But if you didn't walk on the ladder because walking the ladder is bad luck, that's what motivated you, then yeah, that would be either minor shirk or major shirk, depending on whether you believe it's independent of Allah's will or by Allah's will. Yeah. Taib, any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to remind those in the room of the roundtable tomorrow night at 8:30. A very important topic. Please RSVP for the room, inshallah.
Hey, yeah, I was actually gonna do something different. I'm sorry, Zahid, I missed your announcement. Say it again.
Oh, okay. I was just reminding those in the room of the Reverse Roundtable tomorrow night at 8:30 on the topic in reference to our roles in the bars and the lives of the incarcerated.
Yes.
Just want the RSVP for the room, inshallah.
Jaziti khairan. Thank you for that. Anybody, any other questions, comments, critiques?
I don't have any questions in the back channel, inshallah.
Okay. All right. Nothing from Facebook, nothing from the audience in person. So with that, we'll bring today's session to a close. As always, we thank you guys for coming out. Jazakumullah khairan. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.